Thanks for joining us here on 9 News Plus. I'm meteorologist Chris Bianchi. All right, so you probably know it was really cold and it was really snowy during the month of January, not only for Denver and the Front Range, but across most of Colorado as well. But let's put that into some context and get you some of those numbers. It might be a little depressing, but I think it's pretty interesting. I'll start things off with the most important number. Our average January temperature last month, 25 degrees. That made it our coldest overall month. We're talking February's, January's, December's, any sort of month, any month of the year. It was our coldest month since December of 2009. And this is maybe a little bit more depressing, is that this was colder than Buffalo, than Chicago, than Detroit, almost as cold as Minneapolis. So it was really, really cold. And of course, that's unusual. Usually those cities that I mentioned that were warmer than Denver last month, they're usually colder than Denver. Usually, if you've been here for a long time, you know that our winters are pretty mild. We get these downsloping winds. It's nice and tranquil. That was not the case last month, needless to say. And with that came an unusually high amount of snowfall. This is more snow than we get we picked up 13 inches of snow in Denver last month. That is double the January full month average. And it's also worth noting that normally January and midwinter, not a particularly snowy time of the year. On average, January is our 6th snowiest month of the year. And so when we get 13 inches worth of snowfall, again, it's not a particularly snowy time of the year on average for us along the Front Range. Normally, as you probably know, late February, March, April, that is kind of the primo time for big snows here along the Front Range. And in fact, that 13-inch number, that is more snowfall than the March average, full month average of snowfall. So this was again a very March-like January with kind of big storms and a lot of clouds and pretty chilly temperatures. The chilly temperatures, March tends to kind of fluctuate. March tends to go from 60 to snow to 60 to snow. January we had just kind of the cold, the clouds, and the snowfall. And by the way, another fun fact with this was we had snow on the ground during the month of January for 28 of the 31 days of the month. That is really unusual. That's the 5th most number of days with at least an inch of snow on the ground in Denver since 2007, 5th most on record. So it's pretty unusual for us to get that much kind of persistent snow, those big brown snow piles. I'm originally from the East Coast, and I went to school on the East Coast as well. And that's where you expect. You get a nor'easter out in Boston, New York, and that snow turns all brown and gross and sits around for 6-8 weeks. That's coming out there. Not here. Normally we get these downsloping winds that'll warm us on up and poof, that snow's gone. But we normally don't get, as I mentioned, this much snow during the month of January. And as a result of that, the sun angle is much lower. And also we had a lot of water content within that snow, makes it tougher to melt. So a lot of unusual circumstances that made this past month a snowy one, and also with that persistent snow on the ground. Also, it was a cloudier month than usual with those. We had clouds at noon, 10 of 31 days last month, which is also highly unusual. That was our most cloud cover since 1994 here in Denver, based on data from both Denver International Airport and the Centennial Airport. Also worth noting, if you're watching us from somewhere outside of Denver or the immediate urban corridor, this is the amount of snow that we've picked up so far this season. We're at about 37 inches of snow officially at DIA. We are way above the rest of the kind of Front Range urban corridor. So you kind of spread things out. You look at Boulder. Boulder's right around where it should be in terms of its season-to-date snowfall. Same for Colorado Springs, and Fort Collins actually notably behind on its season-to-date snowfall by about 4 or 5 inches. Not a big deal, but it's worth noting again that Denver has seen a lot more snow. And that's just thanks to localized bands that have really favored the immediate Denver area. It was that late December snowstorm, also the storm that we had last month in the middle of the month. Both of those really kind of favored Denver, and specifically the airport where the official observations are held, with some of that higher snowfall. But this is the good news side of things. You look up into the high terrain and the mountains, well above average in terms of their snowpack really the entire mountain range is all getting a lot of snow in recent months, recent weeks, and that is certainly benefiting the high terrain. We're at about 30% above our season to date average in terms of our snowfall if you look across state. We'll note though that southern Colorado could use some of that snowfall. We have been lacking a little bit on that snowfall of late there in the Arkansas and Rio Grande River basin, but really the rest of the state doing A-okay. So the reason why, by the way, it was so cold and so snowy last month, you look at the jet stream, and this was the kind of general positioning of the jet stream. And normally the jet stream is a lot kind of further south, but the jet stream kind of sat over the west coast of the United States, and it kind of continually pumped in lots of moisture, and it meant that we were dealing with a bit more snow than usual and certainly more colder temperatures. So normally that jet stream, it's further south this time of year. It means Texas and Florida seeing some more showers and storms and more activity. But this past month we had that jet stream that was a lot further north. It was able to tap into a lot of Pacific moisture and also kept us kind of persistently cloudy and chilly throughout the month of January. Question I've also gotten a fair bit of is whether or not that means anything for the spring and summer. There's differing rules of thought on this. My colleague meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen loves, and one of his favorite sayings, if he's watching, he'll probably have a good chuckle at this. He loves to say that snow begets more snow. So when you get snow, it obviously eventually, after some time, it will evaporate, it will melt, and that moisture goes up into the air. It doesn't just disappear, it doesn't go poof, go away. That moisture stays in the air, and it makes it more likely for future snowfalls, right? So that's one way to look at it. Number two, in terms of kind of looking at looking at long-term patterns and trends, there isn't a great correlation between a very busy midwinter and what that means for the spring and the summer. Just not a great sense for what that means. There may be some hints, and we'll take a look at those in the coming weeks and months, but we've seen really snowy springs right after a really snowy winter, and we've also seen really dry springs after a snowy winter. So I'm sorry, that's probably not the answer you're looking for. You're probably looking for a bit more of a definitive idea about things, but I will just say that it does look like it generally looks like that maybe a slight lean towards a more active spring and summer, but it's still way too early to tell. But you know what? Overall, we'll take the good news while we've got it. We've got a lot of that snow on the ground that will certainly keep us in check on fire danger over the next few weeks, perhaps the next few months, and also, of course, a great start to our snowpack season to the high country, which is plenty of good news as well. But the top line takeaway, January, really cold, really snowy, and unusually so, our coldest month overall since 2009 here in Denver. So hopefully that answers some of your weather-related questions from what we saw just last month.